What's going on, everybody? My name is Franco, and today I'm continuing my series where I go over the fantasy outlook for each NFL team this season. Now, the Buffalo Bills last year were one of the most high-powered offenses in the league, and I don't really see any reason that's going to change, given their current situation. There's just... damn it. What's going on, everybody? My name is Franco, and I'm continuing my series today where I go over one of each. What's going on, everybody? My name is Franco, and today I'm continuing my series where I go over the fantasy outlook of each team in the NFL. I'm going to be doing one of these a day, so if you like the content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Today we're going to be doing the Buffalo Bills, who were one of the best, if not the best, offense last year, and just really well-rounded on all sides of the ball. I love them in fantasy this year, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We're going to start off with the quarterback, the QB1, really just anything you need in a fantasy football quarterback, which is Josh Allen. He's really come into his own in these past couple of years. He was not really seen as a highly regarded player. In his first year or two, really has broken out into becoming a dual threat. He's got a great arm, cannon of an arm, but more importantly, he's a great rushing quarterback, and his RPO looks are lethal. They have a great scheme going around him, where he's been, taking a lot of hits that way for sure, but he's been able to get his yardage up, both running and passing. He's been efficient. He hasn't made a lot of mistakes. He's just been all around what you want in a fantasy football quarterback or a regular quarterback in general. I am a little worried about his ADP at 24. Taking a quarterback in the second to third round is not something I normally advise on doing. But with the case of Josh Allen, it's pretty forgivable considering how his upside is just so high, both in the rush and the pass game. There's also the question of when the Bills will eventually cut back on his rushing attempts because, you only want your franchise taking so many hits on plays you could pass the ball to a running back to before you start to get worried. But overall, I don't see any reason he won't finish as the QB1 unless someone else has a breakout year, and in that case, I don't see him going below QB2 or QB3. If Josh Allen happens to fall to you in a league, take him. Not that hard. Running game-wise, Devin Singletary had a fantastic end of the season. He was the running back 3 over the final 6 weeks, and his snap count was really up there over that time as well. James Cook was drafted out of Georgia. I'm going to start off with Singletary, whose ADP right now is coming in around 77 with a very low RB32 ranking. The reason it's that low is because he's just been inconsistent at times, both in his own play and in the usage he gets from the team. Normally it's an offense where if he starts to make a lot of mistakes, they'll bench him and they would run Zach Moss or they would run some other options. Matt Breida last year or a year or two ago was an option they would run out of the running back position. But it really feels like after last season, there's no reason for Devin Singletary to not get the lead majority of the snaps, even if he's not like a true workhorse, which you're not going to find at an ADP of 77. I think he should be a high upside player. I don't think he'll have the same usage rate that he did over the last 6 weeks, but I think he'll slot in nicely as an RB2 rank, which is higher than he's indicated. So I really like his value this year, as well as I like James Cook's value. He was drafted this year out of Georgia, and he's got a really high PPR upside as a good pass-catching back. And obviously we know Buffalo's history with running backs. I'm not super high on him, but at an ADP of 113, it's very worthy of taking a chance on him, even if he doesn't end up being like a starting running back, which odds are he won't. He could very well take a J.D. McKissick type of role on a team that could really use that, given their loss of playmakers at the wide receiver position. Speaking of those playmakers, we are down to 2 wide receivers. I did leave out Jamison Crowder, but I guess, spoiler alert, I wouldn't consider him as much unless you have like a super deep league. But I'm going to look mostly at Stefan Diggs and Gabe Davis. Now, Diggs last year was projected to be a wide receiver 5, projected again this year. Had a little bit of a down year by his standards, wasn't as good just in terms of target share, and just wasn't as efficient. But overall, he was still a great play. He returned decent enough value. He was still a top 10 wide receiver. And Gabe Davis, opposite of him, had his breakout game against the Chiefs, as we all know, 4 touchdowns in the playoffs, absolute absurd game. But regardless, he didn't have a bad season overall. He had 20 points per game, average in his last 6, and he should also see the increased boost of the playmaker deficit that Buffalo's facing. This is a team that likes to throw the ball. They have a very fun, very up-tempo offense, and the loss of 2 wide receivers, being Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley, opens up a lot of vacated targets for this wide receiver room. So I could easily see Diggs and Davis just becoming target machines in the end zone. I do think Gabe Davis is going to keep rising. His ADP, as of my last check, was a 76 on Fantasy Pros, but I think as we get closer to the draft and more news starts to come out and just overall hype starts to build up, he might skirt up into those 60 to 50 ADP rankings, which will get a little scary for me. Taking someone like that at that high of a risk. It's a pretty risky pick, but if he pans out, he does have really high league-winning upside, so I could easily see Gabe Davis being a very popular breakout pick amongst fantasy football pundits this year. I really like either of these guys. At their current values, they're each a little too high ADP-wise for me. Like, I could see Diggs being taken in the mid-second, Gabe Davis maybe like the 7th, 6th round roughly is where I'd like to get him. But both of these guys should return great value for you just because of the offense they're in. I could easily see them getting a ton of targets every game, consistent usage. Dawson Knox last year wasn't really on many people's radars as a tight end, and then kind of blew up mostly due to his touchdown count. He was a target of Josh Allen in the end zone numerous times. He was kind of became the de facto tight end one this year, and he just had a pretty good year all around. He was a good waiver wire stream. If you had him, you were pretty happy with him. That being said, I do think he might be due for a little bit of regression in the touchdown department. I mean, obviously, it's hard to sustain that many touchdowns over a single season, but what I believe he lacks in touchdowns, he might make up for in overall usage. He's gotten the trust of Josh Allen more, and towards the end of the season, such as the game against the Chiefs in the regular season, he had moments where he was able to get a little more open down the field as opposed to just wide open in the end zone. Jamison Crowder joining does take some snaps away from him in the middle of the fields, but normally Gabe Davis and Diggs will run outside the numbers, and you had Cole Beasley's spot being vacated in the slot, which means that he should command a little more attention over the middle of the field. Definitely has a bit of an injury risk with last year. He had the hand injury, but I do think we'll see an overall increase in the offense. I trust Josh Allen to get the ball to his playmakers enough, and Dawson Knox, while he will definitely get a regression in touchdown, should be due for his fair share of touchdowns this year. Now, the defense and the kicker in this situation, I really don't see any way you can't love either of these guys. The Bills' defense might be the best in football, and they added Von Miller before I even said that. Like, this is a defense that should really not allow a lot of points at all, given the current, defensive scoring systems. It's mostly centered around not allowing points and yards, and the Bills will do just that. They also don't play the toughest division. While I do like what Miami and New England have done, even I like what the Jets have done, none of these guys are truly going to blow the Bills out. I think the Bills will be able to keep them in check. That's 6 games right there. Really a defense you could just leave and forget for your season. That being said, you'll probably have to draft them pretty high. I think I have them ranked as my number 1 defense, and most people do for good reason. Tyler Bass as well, their kicker. Last year, really all you could ask for out of a kicker. Efficient, didn't miss a lot of kicks, was good on his extra points. Got a lot of them as well, given the nature of Buffalo's offense. When Buffalo's offense struggled, he wasn't as efficient, obviously, but that was few and far between that Buffalo had the bad games. I could really only imagine, games in the snow or the game versus Jacksonville. That was like the only really outside shots, but he's as good as you can get as a kicker. I really like either of these guys, both great value, really just a very well-rounded team. And this is just overall one of the best teams in football. Like, there's really nothing more you can say about that. And they're just going to keep getting better. Josh Allen has a lot of room to grow. That's what these young quarterbacks, Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, they're all going to keep, even Lamar Jackson, they're all going to keep growing, improving, and their offenses will go right along with them. So I love all of them at their values. Give me Josh Allen, Singletary, everywhere I can get them at their ADP, or maybe a little too high for Josh Allen. Defense, kicker, great as well. I'm high on the rest of their playmakers as well, taking chances with some high upside guys like James Cook or Gabe Davis, or a little more experienced guys like Diggs and Dawson Knox. No matter who you get on this offense, I really don't see any way it couldn't play out, and I really do love this team from a fantasy perspective. You should try to get a Buffalo Bill on one of your teams at some point. So that's what I have on this team. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing one for every team. So like, subscribe, keep up to date when your team will be in this video, and I will see you in a future video.